We've seen a lot of Monster High alumni releases lately. Creeproductions collabs with Tim Burton franchises like Corpse Bride, Wednesday, and Nightmare Before Christmas, and even a high fashion collab with Cat's Eye. But despite all of that, it still feels like something's missing. It still doesn't feel like a G1 comeback. What fans once used to love about Monster High is now replaced with cheap fabrics and overpriced dolls. Let's talk about it. This video will be divided into 5 different chapters. What made the original Monster High so special? The new era of Monster High. What's missing? Fan reactions and community frustration. And lastly, my personal hopes for the future. Before we talk about what's wrong with today's releases, let's take a second to remember what made the original Monster High so special in the first place. G1 wasn't just another doll line, it was bold, weird, creative, and proud of it. The characters weren't perfect, they were monsters, outcasts, and that's exactly why so many people connected with them. Each doll had their own distinct personality, background, and freaky flaw. There was a real sense of world building, with stories, webisodes, and even movies that made everything feel alive. You didn't just buy a doll, you got a character with depth. And let's not ignore the design quality in the first years of Gen 1. The clothes were detailed, the materials felt premium, the accessories so specific to each character. You could tell a real thought went into it all. It was unapologetic, unique, and it celebrated individuality in a way that really stood out back then, especially for kids and teens who didn't see themselves in the more traditional polished doll lines. So what have we actually gotten from Monster High recently? In 2022, Monster High came back from the crypt with the Pennywise and Grady Twins Skullector dolls, which sold out in minutes. After that, we got more Skullectors like Greta and Dracula, still both of them selling out in minutes. The Honko 2 line, the Holiday dolls, and G1 Creeproductions hit the shelves, as well as the Real Drama dolls, which just restocked recently. Then there are the Skullector collabs. Corpse Bride, which I personally love this doll, but she definitely has her problems. The Nightmare Before Christmas, Megan, and many more. Visually, they're striking. You could say the aesthetics are on point. But the quality says something different, especially for the high prices. And let's not forget the Fright Zone Cat's Eye collab, which isn't fully agreed to be alumni since the one-of-a-kind dolls are G3. This collab left many collectors wondering who is this really for, because it's definitely not the G3 kids audience. When you line it all up, there's clearly a push to bring Monster High Generation 1 back into the spotlight. But instead of building on what made G1 special, it feels like the brand is chasing trends, leaning on nostalgia a bit too much, collabs and aesthetics without really bringing back the soul of the original dolls. It's not that everything is bad, some releases are genuinely really good, but if we're being honest, it's starting to feel more like a cash grab than a real revival. So what exactly is missing? Because from the outside it looks like Monster High is everywhere again. Dolls in stores, collabs, reissues, even comics. But when you actually look closer, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like Monster High. G1 had a clear identity. It was bold, freaky, fun, inclusive, and deeply weird in the best way. The characters had freaky flaws and unapologetic personalities. They stood out in design and message. Now, I feel like the brand is stuck between wanting to be mainstream trendy and still cash in on nostalgia. But instead of updating the G1 spirit, it just flattens it. The dolls look familiar, but they don't feel like the Monster High we remember. Fashion always was a huge part of G1's charm. The outfits were layered, detailed, expressive, and told you something about the character. At least in the early years of Generation 1. Today we're getting stiff fabrics, one-layer dresses with sometimes even unfinished edges, shiny, cheap fabrics, and little to no accessories. And this isn't just about style, it's about effort and care. At prices above $50 to $90 per doll, the quality just isn't where it should be. Many collectors feel like they're paying premium prices for something that looks half-finished. G1 had lore, real lore. We got webisodes, movies, diaries, a world with emotional depth. Characters had friendships, conflicts, insecurities, all shown through storytelling and design. Now, we have a couple of short Pride-themed comics, and we're getting some Harley-themed posts or reels on Instagram and TikTok. Do these things matter? Yes, of course. Are they enough? Not even close. The Pride comics, for example, were a great step toward representation, and fans appreciated that. But they were isolated, short, and had no tie into the dolls, packaging, or broader brand direction. The lore doesn't feel connected anymore. Characters exist, but they don't grow. They don't live in the same way they did before. We don't need a whole animated series, but something to build a coherent emotional world again would go a long way. And now I just gotta talk about the collabs, because let's be real, the Tim Burton collabs look amazing. Corpse Bride, Nightmare Before Christmas, Wednesday, they're well designed, they're fun, they sell. But at some point it just starts to feel like Monster High is just borrowing the souls of other brands instead of finding its own again. There is no in-world explanation, no connection to the core characters. They're just beautiful collector's pieces with no real storytelling behind them. Again, they're great, but they're not Monster High storytelling. That's the core issue. Everything we're seeing, the dolls, the comics, the collabs, feels like it was created to look like Monster High, but it doesn't act like it. It doesn't feel like it. There's no weirdness, no school drama, no emotional hook. No sense of these characters live in a real freaky fabulous world. It's like someone copied the aesthetic but forgot the heart. Fans aren't just being negative, they want to fall back in love with Monster High, but they need something real, not just references and a pretty packaging. Until then, it's going to keep feeling like a brand in costume, not a true return of the ghouls we loved. The Monster High community isn't staying silent though. If you've been on Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, or even YouTube lately, you've probably seen the same things over and over. Collectors are frustrated, and honestly, it's not hard to see why. One of the biggest complaints is about the price. Dolls that used to cost around $20 now sit at $50 to $90 for pretty much the same quality. And that price incline isn't just inflation. And then there's the pace of releases. It feels like every few weeks there's another drop, another collab, another exclusive, another limited edition. For casual collectors, it's overwhelming. For completionists, it's exhausting and financially draining. There's barely any time to enjoy or discuss one release before the next one is already announced. This gives people zero breathing room, and more importantly, it cheapens the impact of each release. Nothing feels special anymore, when everything is supposed to be special. As Scare Source on Instagram says, remember when we were promised quality over quantity? The Monster High alumni era is all just a big cash grab. It always has been. And I totally agree with that. And again, this isn't just hate for the sake of hating. This is coming from fans who want to love this brand, fans who were thrilled to see Monster High come back, and are now watching it slowly lose what made it magical. I've seen a lot of people recently say they're stepping away from collecting altogether, not because they've stopped loving Monster High, but because it doesn't feel worth it anymore. The dolls feel rushed, the prices feel unfair, and the magic feels gone. Not everyone feels this way, of course. Many fans, including me, still really enjoy most of the new releases from the Monster High alumni line. But it's hard to ignore the growing sense of burnout, disappointment, and disconnection in the community. Alright, we've talked a lot about what's gone wrong, but what needs to happen for Monster High to really feel right again. For fans to buy not just out of nostalgia, but because they're genuinely excited. I strongly believe Monster High can find its way back, but some things have to change. And the first thing is quality over quantity. This is probably the biggest point. Not every new idea needs an immediate doll release. Instead of constantly pumping out new dolls, often with cheap fabrics and shallow concepts, always remember, less is more. Fewer releases means more time for design, fabric choices, and details. Less burnout means more excitement. If you're asking $50 to $90 for a doll, it needs to feel premium. We need creativity, quality, and character, like the originals, but better. They need to bring back storytelling, not just decoration. Monster High was never just about selling dolls. It was a world, a school of monster kids with real stories and real feelings. Today there are some attempts like the Pride comics, small buys, or social media posts. And that's good, but it's not enough. What's missing is a real universe that ties releases together. Maybe short webisodes, TikTok miniseries, comics with real story arcs, not one-off posts. Fans want to know not just how a character looks, but who they are, what they feel, what they struggle with, how they connect with others. Monster High used to be character-driven, and that needs to come back. Monster High was never about perfection, and that's the point. G1 was messy, edgy, unapologetic, and that's what made it authentic. And Generation 1 definitely had its own unique problems for sure. But that's a whole unique topic for another video. Let the designs get bolder again. Weird proportions, freaky colors, unusual hairstyles, spooky accessories that are a bit too much. Monster High never followed trend, it set them. Time to do that again. And now for my last point, take the community seriously. The Monster High community is loud, critical, yes, but also insanely passionate, creative, and loyal. Many collectors are designers, customizers, and artists on their own. They give Mattel free feedback, ideas, whole mood boards in the comments. And honestly, if you really listen to this community, the solutions are right there. It seems like Mattel is slowly making the right steps forward, as they just today ask collectors which items they would like to see being reproduced. But just reproductions isn't enough. So, after all the hype, the collabs, the reissues, and the endless waves of releases, we're left with one big question. Is the magic of Monster High really gone, or is it just hidden beneath too much plastic, too many trends, and too little heart? Because what made Monster High special was never just the characters or the designs, it was the attitude, the story, the weirdness, the confidence. It was a world where being different wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. And right now, it feels like the brand is trying to recreate that energy, but without really understanding why it mattered in the first place. We've seen beautiful dolls, cool concepts, nostalgic packaging, but what we haven't seen is soul. But hey, that's just my take. Now I want to hear yours. Do you still feel the Monster High magic? Do you think there's hope for a true comeback? Let me know in the comments, seriously. I love to hear what you think. What would you change? What do you miss the most? And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, and share it with another Monster High fan who's been thinking the same thing. Thanks for watching. Stay weird, stay freaky, and stay you.